Let us open our Bible to the book of Habakkuk, chapters 1 and 2. Habakkuk 1 and 2. Proud wickedness and divine punishment. Proud wickedness and divine punishment. We don't know anything about Habakkuk than what that one can be gleaned from his book, because the book of Habakkuk consists of 5 oracles about the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, and the Chaldeans' rise to power is dated around 612 before Christ. It is assumed he was active about that time, making him an early contemporary of, but more likely slightly earlier than Jeremiah and Zephaniah. The etymology of the name Habakkuk is not clear, and its form has no parallel in Hebrew. The name is possibly related to the Akkadian word Habakkuk, the name of a fragrant plant, or the Hebrew root meaning embrace. The Akkadian is an extinct East Semitic language, part of the greater Afro-Asiatic language family that was spoken in the ancient Mesopotamia, yes. From this root embrace, some assume that Habakkuk is the boy born of the Shumanite woman through Elisha's blessing. I quote, and he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace, which is said in Hebrew, evoket, therefore Habakkuk, ebeket, which therefore Habakkuk. So you shall embrace a son. And she said, nay, my Lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. And of course, this is quoting 2 Kings 4 verse 14. We do not know, however, that Habakkuk's authorship of this message was accepted from very early on. While Habakkuk may differ from the other prophets in terms of whom he addresses in his message, he is similar in that he is troubled by the disobedience of his people. In Habakkuk's case, however, rather than pleading with Yahweh for more time or with the people for more attention, he questions why Yahweh's judgment hasn't already fallen on his nation. Like Nahum, Habakkuk begins by referring to his message as an oracle or a message placed on his heart by God. Like Nahum, Habakkuk assures his readers that what he is about to relate is not from his own ingenuity, but is from Yahweh. Unlike Nahum, however, Habakkuk does not state that his message is specifically directed at any one individual or group of people, so he will devote a great deal of space to a denunciation of the Chaldean. Habakkuk was written as a dialogue or conversation between Yahweh and the prophet. Habakkuk saw that the leaders of Israel were oppressive to the poor. So he asked the question why Yahweh allowed those wicked people to prosper. When God told him that the Babylonians would come to punish Judah, he became more concerned. He did not understand how Yahweh could use the Babylonians, who were actually more wicked than the wicked Jews, to bring judgment on Yahweh's chosen people. Yahweh's answer was that the just would live by faith in God, and that they had the assurance that God was doing what is right. Yahweh told Habakkuk that in due time the Babylonians too would be judged, and that justice would come about for the people of God. Habakkuk ends his book with a prayer or praise, a song which sometimes leads to assume that he was a member of the tribe of Levi, which served as musicians in Solomon's temple. The subject of this prophecy is the destruction of Judea and Jerusalem for the sins of the people, and the consolation of the faithful under national calamity. Habakkuk 1 verses 1 to 11. The wickedness of the land, the fearful vengeance to be executed. Verses 1 to 4. The nature of Habakkuk's complaint to Yahweh began in the invocation and elaborated in the statement of the problem. Describes his society as a place characterized by general spiritual and ethical havoc, widespread destruction, devastation. Verses 5 to 6, Yahweh tells Habakkuk to look to the nations. The Lord is already at work in and behind the scenes of Earth's history, to set in motion events that will change the whole situation. And when Habakkuk learns what is to happen, he will be utterly amazed. Why? Because Yahweh will raise up the Chaldeans to discipline Habakkuk's people. Verses 7 to 11, Yahweh reassures the prophet of his sovereign control. Since the prophet will be surprised at the announcement about the Chaldeans, Yahweh goes on to supply a brief resume of their character and potentially devastating power. Verse 9, contrary to Habakkuk's complaint, Yahweh assures his prophet that he sees all that comes to pass and hears the prayers and complaints of his people. Habakkuk's own word is sent back to him. Has Judah done violence? It shall in turn suffer violence at the hands of a violent nation whose well-trained and battle-seasoned army will move forward with such precision that the whole striking force will march as one to achieve its objectives, at the same time taking many captives. Verses 10 to 11. Although the language here is exaggerated to make a point, in light of the ancient records, it is not inappropriately exaggerated. Many texts could be cited concerning the Chaldeans' successful campaigning. The picture of Chaldean Chaldean armed might is of one who holds all his foes in contempt and mocks them. Such a nation knows no God but strength. The servants of Yahweh are deeply afflicted by seeing ungodliness and violence prevail, especially among those who profess the truth. No man scrupled doing wrong to his neighbor. We should long to be taken to the world where holiness and love reign forever, and no violence shall be before us. Yahweh has good reasons for his long suffering towards bad men and the rebukes of good men. The day will come when the cry of sin will be heard against those who do wrong, and the cry of prayer for those who suffer wrong. They were to notice what was going forward among the heathen by the Chaldeans, and to consider themselves a nation to be squashed by them. But most people presume on continued prosperity, or that calamities will not come in their days. They are a bitter and hasty nation, fierce, cruel, and bearing down all before them. They will overcome all that oppose them, but it is a great offense and a common offense of proud people to take glory to themselves. The closing words give a glimpse of comfort. Habakkuk 1 verses 12 to 17. 12 to 17. Let me fix the problem here. I try to do it as quick as I can. 1 second, just 1 second. The problem of breakdown of machines. So, Habakkuk 1 verses 12 to 17. These judgments to be inflicted by a nation more wicked than themselves. Verse 12, Habakkuk simply cannot reconcile Yahweh's use of the Chaldeans, a people more corrupt than those they are to judge, to punish his people. He begins his second perplexity with an invocation in which he expresses his consternation faced with the prospect of destructive judgment, perhaps even the death of the nation itself. Habakkuk cried out to Israel's God, the Holy One of her salvation, who alone is her refuge in such times. Verses 13 to 17. Habakkuk has a reservation. He cannot comprehend why a holy God plans to use a nation more wicked than the nation he desires to punish. From the prophet's perspective, he has to wonder that once his plan is put into operation, will not a helpless humankind always be at the mercy of these God-commissioned agents of chastisement? Habakkuk's fears are not unfounded, for the Chaldean war machine was effective enough to gain for them political dominance across the northern part of the Fertile Crescent and through the Levant to the borders of Egypt. However, matters may be, yet Yahweh is the Lord our God, our Holy One. We are an offending people. He is an offended God. Yet we will not entertain hard thoughts of him or of his service. It is great comfort that whatever mischief people design, Yahweh designs good. And we are sure that his counsel will stand. So wickedness may prosper a while, yet Yahweh is holy and does not approve the wickedness. As he cannot do iniquity himself, so he is of purer eyes than to behold it with any approval. By the principle we must abide, though the dispensations of Yahweh's providence may for a time in some cases seem to us not to agree with it. The prophet complains that Yahweh's patience was abused, and because sentence against these evil works and workers was not executed speedily, their hearts were the more fully set in them to do evil. Some they take up as with the angle, one by one. Others they catch in shoals as in their net and gather them in their drag, their enclosing net. They admire their own cleverness and contrivance. There is great proneness in us to take the glory of outward prosperity to ourselves. This is idolizing ourselves, sacrificing to the drag net because it is our own. Yahweh will soon end successful and splendid robberies. Death and judgment will make people cease to prey on others, pray like the bird of prey, and they will be preyed on themselves. Let us remember, whatever advantages we possess, we must give all glory to Yahweh. Habakkuk 2 verses 1 to 4. Habakkuk must wait in faith. Verse 1. Habakkuk ends his complaint with a statement of his renewed confidence in Yahweh and his intention to assume the role of a watchman. As a city watchman runs his post atop of the walls to look for the approach of danger or a messenger, or to keep watch over current events, Habakkuk will assume the role of a prophetic watchman, taking his post to watch for Yahweh's reply. When tossed and perplexed with doubts about the methods of providence, we must watch against temptations and to be impatient, the temptations to be impatient. When we have poured out complaints and requests before Yahweh, we must observe the answers Yahweh gives by His word, His spirit, or His providence. What the Lord will say to our case. Yahweh will not disappoint the believing expectations of those who wait to hear what He will say unto them. All our concerns are in the truth of Yahweh's word. So He promised favor, His promised favor be deferred long. It will come at last and abundantly recompense us for waiting. The humble, broken-hearted, repenting sinner alone seeks to obtain an interest in this salvation. He will rest his soul on the promise and on Christ, and in and through whom it is given. Thus, he or she walks and works, and as well as lives by faith, perseveres to the end, and is exalted to glory. While those who distrust or despise Yahweh's all-sufficiency will not walk uprightly with Him. The just will live by faith in these precious promises, while the performance of them is deferred. Only those made just by faith will live, will be happy here and forever. Habakkuk 2 verses 5 to 14. Judgments upon the Chaldeans, verses 5 to 8. Yahweh's answer takes the form of a logical argument. If it is true that the arrogant have ungodly desires and never come to enjoy the blessing of Yahweh, how much more certain is it that the qualities accompanying such an attitude will ultimately betray them? The underlying implication is clear. The Chaldeans' selfishness and success will be their undoing. Verses 9 to 10. This second woe underscores the Chaldeans' capacity for cunning schemes against humankind, building on the imaginary of the first woe in chapter 2 verse 6. The Chaldean is portrayed as one who achieves wealth through violence and evil means. Verse 11. The stone walls and beams refer to Chaldeans' building projects. in the end, the Chaldeans will have no lasting empire. Verses 12 to 14. The image of construction found in the second word is continued in the third. The chief materials used in constructing the city are seen for what they are. They are bloodshed and injustice. Such conduct is an affront to a holy and righteous God. It marks the Chaldeans as those who, unlike the righteous who reflect Yahweh's standards, are arrogant and presumptuous. The prophet reads the doom of all proud and oppressive powers that bear hard upon Yahweh's people. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of the life are the entangling snares of humans. And we find him that led Israel captive, himself led captives by each of these. No more of what we have is to be reckoned ours than what we come honestly by. Riches are but clay, thick clay. What are gold and silver but white and yellow earth? Those who travel through thick clay are hindered and dirtied in their journey. So are those who go through the world in the midst of abundance of wealth. And what fools are those who burden themselves with continual care about it, with a great deal of guilt in getting, saving, and spending it, and with a heavy account which they must give another day. They overload themselves with these thick clay, and so sink themselves down into destruction and perdition. See what will be the end of it. What is gotten by violence from others shall take away by violence. Covetousness brings disquiet and easiness into a family. He who is greedy of gains troubles his own house. What is worse, it brings the curse of Yahweh upon all the affairs of such house. There is a lawful gain, which by the blessing of Yahweh may be a comfort to a house. But what is got by fraud and injustice will bring poverty and ruin upon a family. Yet that is not the worst. Thou hast sinned against thine own soul, hast endangered it. Those who wrong their neighbors do much greater wrong on their own souls, to their own souls. If the sinner thinks he has managed his frauds and violence with art and contrivance, the riches and possessions he heaped together will witness against him. There are not greater drudges in the world than those who are slaves to mere worldly pursuits. And what comes of it? They find themselves disappointed of it and disappointed in it. Owing it is worse than vanity, it is vexation of spirit. By staining and sinking earthly glory, Yahweh manifests and magnifies his own glory, and fills the earth with the knowledge of it as plentifully as waters cover the sea, which are deep and spread far and wide. Habakkuk 2 verses 15 to 20. Also upon drunkenness and idolatry. Verses 15 to 16. The fourth word begins with an invective formed with a strong allegory. The Chaldean is a man who gives his neighbor a drink in seeming hospitality, but the cup contains wrath and is designed to get its partaker drunk. The giver is forced to take his own drink and suffer the disgrace of exposure. Verse 18. In dragging the word oracle to close, Habakkuk deliberately changes the order he has previously employed by beginning with the reason of the threatened judgment. The religious orientation of the Chaldean is now examined and shown to be without foundation. His idolatrous polytheism is seen to be worthless, since idols are only a humankind creation. To put one's trust in them is to trust one's own creation rather than the Creator. A severe war is pronounced against drunkenness. It is very fearful against all who are guilty. Drunkenness and also taking all forms of drug. It is very fearful against all who are guilty of drunkenness at any time and in any place, from the stately palace to the paltry ale hole. To give one drink who is thirsty and poor, or a weary traveler, or ready to perish, is charity. But to give a neighbor drink